Breda, to get off the program, it is our great honors to have you to introduce to our audience who you are and the work that you do. Can you help us doing that?
Course, yeah. So, Breda McCague is my name. I am based in Ireland, and I am only delighted to be with you today on your program. And in very similar vein to yourself, I am very motivated to try and inspire as many people to get out of comfort zones and into the best version of themselves as possible. So, anything to do with human development and growth, I'm there. So delighted to be with you today, and thank you for inviting me to join you on this today. What I do at
Thank
the
you.
moment is I'm a transformation specialist in banking. I've been in the banking industry for the last 22 years, and I also then do talks on emotional intelligence and mind mastery, plus leadership, because I'm absolutely obsessed with the leadership. And that came from my time in the army. I joined the Reserve Defence Forces in Ireland when I was 17. I'm a lot more than 17 now. But when I was 17, I joined them and I learned an awful lot. I spent 20 years with them and I became my unit's first female lieutenant. And I learned how to lead people. I also seen a lot of brilliant leadership. I also seen not so great leadership and the impacts of that. And then moving into a corporate career, I've seen more of that. So more again on really fabulous leaders and how amazing the impact they can have on the world is, and then the not so great leaders. So I am really empowered to try and teach everybody A, to become a leader, and B, how to do leadership really well so that you see it as an honor, and you begin to see it as something that you can, leave as a legacy in this world.
Wow.
So that's what drives me.
Wow. I really enjoy watching what you do on LinkedIn, and because it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of vibes, a lot of things that every time I'm a positive person in nature, but every time I watch what you do, it's give me a lot more energy to continue doing what I'm doing. So thank you for doing that. Brita, allow me to bring you back in time because who you are today might be different from who you think you would be when you were young, right? And we would like to bring you
Yeah.
back in when you were young. And what did you envision one day when you grow up, you're gonna become, and what kind of job do you think you're gonna do when you grow up, though?
Yeah. And all the way through my childhood, all the way through my teenage years, I never knew what I wanted to be. I'm not quite sure I've even nailed it yet. As a kid, I could not put my finger on what I wanted to do. I
Ah,
was I was in Ireland. I was reared on a farm, so I had very little. Like there was no Google when I was a kid. There was no internet, so social interaction was quite limited to your family and your school, really.
ah,
And so then I started playing music as a
mm,
kid, which then opened up my world, and I learned to enter a lot of competitions
ah,
playing instruments in Irish traditional music, and
ah,
that introduced me to stagecraft
ah,
because I was on a lot of stages and in a lot of competitions. And I do think that exposure to competition as a kid is actually what drives a lot of what I do in different areas of my life now.
ah,
Um, I think I wanted to be the best I could at, playing competitions and stuff like that. And I see that in myself now at
mm,
the age of almost 46. I'm still like that.
mm,
And a lot of people are not like that. And I think it's because I was doing music and competitions at that young age.
mm,
So competition is healthy, not too much of it, obviously, but
mm,
competition is a healthy thing to teach a kid. And then into my teenage years, I was playing with a show band
mm,
while I was at college and while I was at school. And that absolutely taught me how to entertain people. And I
mm,
love watch people enjoy what I do on a stage.
mm,
But and oddly now, now at the age of almost 46, I do a lot of that on stage. But I'm teaching people how to understand their own mindsets, how to work on them. And yet I love entertaining them and I love being on the stage. So I know most people hate being on the stage. I'm the total opposite, but I do think it's because I was exposed to it when I was younger.
mm,
Um, and then also, oddly, like when I was 17, I got a phone call from my best friend at the time who said, "Come on and rejoin this thing that girls are only allowed into now." And I didn't even know what it was. And I said, absolutely. No, I was not a feminist at the age of 17. And in fact, I was totally, probably oblivious to the whole world of inequality. I would say I was in a position of privilege. I joined the army. My parents went mad. There was very little military background in my family or any knowledge. And I went off in an army uniform to this army barracks. And I remember thinking, I've no idea what I'm doing, but it's going to be fun. It'll be something different. There'll be challenge in it for me. There's bound to be crack in there somewhere. There's bound to be something different. And there was all of that. And it was phenomenal. And I only went to see, open-minded to see what I thought. And I stayed forever. Like, I was 20 years in it. And it became a whole new element to my life. So there I got coached. And I got trained, and I was, pulling weapons apart as a 17-year-old girl. I was doing everything that I never seen coming. And probably, I remember thinking to myself, because there was very few girls in it, I was thinking to myself, I'm very privileged to be getting to do this, because most girls don't even know this exists. So I was getting rounded in terms of what I was learning. I was around a lot of older men with all different leadership styles. I was watching and analysing how they were leading us and how they planned and how they, built our training, how they handled us, how they motivated us. And I learned from all of them. And I began to just get fascinated at how some of them were brilliant at it. And I learned really, really well how to coach people. And again, that was just, it's not fluke. It's the fact that I say yes to things that scare most people. That's the trick in this stuff. When I study humans, which I do a lot now, I see so much fear in humans. And I've had to, pull my own fear apart and break it all down to understand it and figure out where I got it and see, is it serving me and is it serving those around me? And the answer is always no. Fear in people now that we are not primitive people in a cave. Now fear is just keeping people stuck. So I would have seen an awful lot of that all the way through all that coaching, and the different ways people would have reacted. In the army, you have to do a lot of presentation stuff. So you're out on a big square in an army barracks and you're marching and you're doing stuff like that. So even things like that, you could see how other people reacted to it. They didn't like doing it. Some people loved it. And I just started to see the difference in humans and why are we different and why does one person think they can't do it and the other person is fine with it, right? And so starting to see how we value ourselves, how we identify as who we are as people is massive in terms of the action we take.
How did you, before we get into the passion that you are doing right now, back then you were in the army, and how did you move into a career in the banking though? In one occasion, can you do both at the same time or what?
Yeah, I did the two at the same time. So I had this crazy life where I'd be canoeing on a Saturday out on a lake, or I'd be climbing a mountain on a Saturday or a Sunday, or I'd be going shooting, and I'd be back in a bank on a Monday morning, clean and shining. It was like two different lives altogether. And I was probably learning more about humans in the army end of it because I was getting coaching and they were developing me a lot. So then in the banking world, they started putting me into training as well. And I started, getting training from both corporate worlds plus military worlds. So I had the best of both worlds. And I was very young to be getting that kind of investment, because I was in the two things. Now, not everybody wants to live life that busy. But for me at 17, I loved it. And I didn't like being idle. I liked doing lots of stuff with lots of people. I'm quite extroverted and I love people. People make me tick. So, being around people, whether that was in an army capacity, whether that was in a banking capacity with customers, whatever, that's my happy space. So plenty of that was in my life when I was young.
When did you figure out that you had the passion to have developing others though? Since when? At what age, remember?
I'd say always. I would say always. I remember back in some of the banks that I worked in some years ago, people saying to me, "You are brilliant at encouraging everybody." And I remember just, I would see ways that we could get each other encouraged, and I would sort of build little ideas or events or, just do an awful lot of recognition. And then I started I was always interested in people. I was always analysing people and how they think. And I always thought the gift of encouragement is free, right? It costs me nothing to encourage you or to give you insights that will help you in your life. Yet many of us don't do it. And yet many of us have loads of insights that we could share. So I just used to watch the difference in people, and I decided, probably very influenced by a lot of my own mentors at the time, who were very giving. They gave a lot. The guys in the army gave a lot to me. The guys in the bank, everybody around me, if I asked them for help or if I asked them for guidance or advice, I got it. And I remember thinking, they're making such a difference to my life. Why is everybody not doing this? And that's where I started figuring out the different mindsets that we have, which is sort of, I've always been interested in that stuff, but I was always watching behaviour of others and analysing it to see, where do I want to be? What bits do I admire? What bits have changed my life? And then therefore, which bits do I want to absorb more of? What do I want to learn more of, so that I can be someone like that too, and give to others?
Wow. I don't want to stereotype it, but your ability to absorb people behavior, analyzing it, and self-reflection on yourself doesn't seem like a typical extrovert person. Because normally it is a lot more than on the other side of the spectrum, right? And so you mentioned about you were young. Yeah, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't the Google back then, and everything that you had was the conversation and connections within the family or at the communities, right? And back then, was the people, did you observe people behavior a lot back then, or let me change the question. If your friends or your people close to you tell you, say something about you back then, what would they say about you, Breda?
They always said I was full of rascality, and I was always a bit of a rebel. So I was the second child in my family, and I think that really has an impact on how your behaviour develops and how your character develops. So I had an older sister, and I certainly would have had to learn to stand up to my older sibling. And I think that made me a little bit more of the rebel and a little bit more competitive than I would have been if I had come in a different place in the family. So I think I was, because I've always been like this, but I think that's what I was sort of reacting to. The other person that would have influenced me, whilst I was only in school environments and home environments as a kid, my dad has had a massive influence on the way my thinking and the mechanics of my analysis works. I used to sit watching him. So he was a farmer, he ran his own business. At the age of 16, he had me running his VAT accounts, all his books, all his business accounts. He had me doing everything, and he had me driving a Jeep when I was 12. So he was brilliant at just, letting you do things and letting you try things. Very calm, chilled man. And I used to sit watching him watch the news at 9 o'clock at night. You know the way Google Box is a thing now? I was actually doing that as a kid. And there was never, it wasn't a thing. There was no concept. But I used to watch him watching the nighttime news on the TV because of his analysis. So there would be a piece on the news. He would say something about that. It would be totally not what I expected him to say. He would always have a totally alternative angle to most people that I knew at the time.
Wow.
So he would see things with a real alternative slant to everybody else. And I found this fascinating. So I used to sit up at night in the kitchen listening to him. And so he had somebody to talk to. So he was telling me, he would kind of comment on some of the stuff he's seen and why it was wrong and why it didn't make any sense. So he was a real logic, common sense thinker. And I used to be in bed late every night because I was sitting analysing him, enjoying learning this, and I missed the school bus every morning.
How did
My
you go
mother
to
used to
school
go
then?
mad. I used to miss it every morning. And she used to give out to me, why are you not going to bed on time at night? I used to say, because I'm sitting watching telly with daddy.
Oh, what a wise man he is. Because expanding the thinking in a different directions to think sitting in different
Yeah,
angles and teaching his lovely children to
yeah,
think, and which lead me
yes,
to an area that my wife and I are fascinating of learning is thinking. We
yeah,
believe that our ability to think actually is not increasing, but actually is decreasing because so many distractions out there, and then so many different priorities out there for individual right now, right? And every time we got
yeah.
a chance to talk to somebody, and as you mentioned about the word thinking, I would like to ask for the secret. How do you do your thinking back then, now,
Constant.
and in the future? How did you live? How do
I
you do
think
that? Yeah.
I think you never stop thinking, but you
Mm.
have to be careful that your thinking is a healthy thinking and
Mm.
it's growth as well. Because
Mm.
there's so many people in our world overthinking at the
Mm.
moment,
Mm.
and I do call them fleeting thoughts.
Mm.
So there's so many people with thoughts that just run round and round and round and round again on them, and they can't get their minds to stop. I used
Mm.
to have that many
Mm.
years ago. I was in roles that were probably quite pressurized in sales. And I remember having that overthinking. And I had to learn tools and techniques to be able to stop that happening, because that's not healthy for your mind or your body,
Mm.
nor is it productive because
Mm.
you're using energy to do all that overthinking, which
Mm.
means you've got less energy to do the actions or the clear strategic thinking that
Ah.
you need to be doing to find
Ah.
solutions. So, and to your point about people have so many distractions in their world right now and that they're thinking less, never has there been more material available to them
Mm.
around tools and techniques to teach them how to healthy think and work those minds in a way that can change their lives.
Mm.
But what I see is we've all the information available, it's all on our phones. Most people are not using their phones to learn. They're
Mm.
using their phones to distract them.
Ah.
And therefore, what we're creating and what you see then in the world is this mass of anxiety.
Mm.
So, it's lack of belief in themselves, I see as a massive, I think that's a pandemic on its own.
Yeah.
And I think it's growing. So the more I see, particularly teenagers, but also in adults as well, I think society is teaching people to self-loathe
Mm.
and critique themselves and each other far too much. If you want to figure out how to make a human happy and
Mm.
at its most productive,
Mm.
that's not the way you train them. If you
Mm.
want a human to be happy and at its most productive and doing amazing things, then you teach it to love itself and to
Mm.
know self-worth, self-esteem, self-value, confidence,
Mm.
right? But society doesn't really support that
Mm.
because so many people have been taught, be humble, don't be arrogant. And you've heard things like, particularly at this side of the world, there would be a lot of, who does she think she is? There would be a
Mm.
lot of, she's too big for her boots. There would be a lot of terminology used around wealth and abundance
Mm.
that frames it as something bad. Now, I'm not
Mm.
saying greed is healthy, but abundance is healthy
Yep.
in relationships, in your finances, in your life.
Mm.
Yet, that is not the way most are taught in society. It's very much like play down your unique talents, fit in, be compliant, fit in the box, do what everybody else does. And I think there's a whole piece there around, we are encouraging humans to be sheep, and humans don't work best when they're sheep. Humans work best when they're learning and their neurons are fired up, when they like themselves, when they
Mm.
appreciate who they are and know their values. That's when you get a human at their best.
Wow. So at the end of the day, being late for the morning school bus actually paid back a lot for for us not to be in the
It
bus,
did.
in the box when I was starting to run to school or find alternative ways to get to school on time, right? But Brida,
Yes.
share with us the tips that you are doing and you have been doing so that you can maintain a positive, healthy energy toward what you're thinking, and still have a abundance energy for the doings also. Can you share with us that?
Yeah. Do you know what I did for many years? I had to rebuild my personality, my character, my self belief, and everything because I had a difficult personal experience in my life for a number of years. And that forced me to study human behavior even more. And what it also made me do was figure out who I was as a person and who I wanted to be and how I could improve myself, right? So, and how I did that and how I continue to maintain that is a lot of reading on thought leadership, on leadership itself, on mind mastery is really what I would describe it as, and emotional intelligence. Now, I always had an interest in emotional intelligence, but over the last sort of 10 years, I became very interested in it because I needed to understand it better so that I could build my way out of the situation I had found myself in. And emotional intelligence, I learned, is something that we are all lacking as humans. If we do not understand emotional intelligence, we are only half living lives. We are not living to our fullest. No way. When you study emotional intelligence and you start to understand how your emotions work, and by the way, men and women both have a full working suite of emotions. And yet I'm not seeing us as a society teaching any of them how to work them. So then we're looking at this society and it's riddled with anxiety and depression, and nobody is teaching them how to prevent it. Yet there's loads of information that I found that I was able to learn and able to rebuild myself. So I'm looking at the world thinking, why are we just medicating people when they are, not that medication's bad. I know that there is a place for medication, but we should also be teaching them techniques and tools, how to understand emotion, how to regulate emotion, how to work you at your best. Because when you are in a place where you like yourself and you are feeling limitless, you will make a better contribution to the world. The world will win. Everybody will win. You'll be happier, and the world is benefiting from you being your true self and bringing your talents and skills to it.
Wow. There was so many speakers joining my program and share similar to what you share. So they learn something first because they need to fix the situation that happened to their lives. So learning and being expert in that give them the tools that help them overcome the challenge better. And then when it's emerged with the love for others, then that's when the sparkle moment happens. So then they can start to coming out and show the people around them, show the world how they deal with themselves, and the journey of transforming from themselves, and then help one person to the next. So I want to learn the secret, Peter. When you first started to empower, to teach people and to help others to grow, how did you tell them so that they can break the ice and allow you to come in and support them though?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two elements to that. I think one is being open about your own growth because people learn from people. And I did a lot of talks online during lockdown because that's where we all went, to Zoom. And a lot of people would have seen me doing talks here or there on some of the social media channels. And I got a lot of DMs from people who were really, really struggling. And even though I was having a rough time myself in lockdown, I actually knew that if I was helping others, it helps me. So, the beauty of being a human is you're at your best when you're helping others.
Yep.
So even if you are struggling, you still should, as your own therapy, you should go and help others. If you have the tools and techniques, you should still do it. So even if you're in the battlefield yourself, rather than, wallowing or allowing the pain around you to impact you, if you just see things through that alternative angle that I was talking about when I was watching my dad, flip things And instead of telling yourself, I can't manage this right now, I can manage this right now, I will find a way. And my motto in lockdown was find new ways, because most of the ways people had created to, help them cope with their crazy busy lives had disappeared. But that just meant that they had to be more creative and stir up some of the fabulous creation that they were born with, right? Because we were all very creative as kids. And then watch us as adults, we get less and less creative. It's less and less encouraged. But I was encouraging people in lockdown to stir up the creativeness in you and find new, quirky, unique ways to cope. But anyway, back to your original question. It's about being open yourself and being very honest and raw about how you've done it, because that's inspiring people. And then they can get inspiration from you and want to go and learn. So that's one of the bits. The other bit to this is to keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
When I was trying to understand someone else's psychology and trying to understand someone else's behavior, all of the material I was finding was very technical and very scientific. And I'm not into science. Well, I am into science, but I wouldn't have that kind of brain where I'm attracted to maths or some stuff like that. I'm not that kind of person. So I would have struggled reading a lot of the material that I was reading was quite heavy. And I remember thinking, in banking, what works with stakeholders is keeping things simple for them. So maybe if I figure out how to break this stuff down and make it simple for people, I'll get it easier, and other people can benefit from that skill that I happen to have through my banking career. So I used to take the different pieces and the psychology, and I just kept researching night and day on my phone till I found stuff that I could make sense of. And then I would join the dots on other bits that I had read. And I was able to join all of the dots eventually. It took me 7 years doing that. And after the 7 years, I felt like I have got this now. I understand. I've been under every stone on this stuff. I've unturned every pebble on this stuff until it made full sense to me. And so then I've got this gorgeous 360 degrees picture of us as humans and all of the topics that we have to work on in little bits. Everybody's different. So some will have to work more on other bits, and so on. But keeping it simple. So I drew diagrams because I was thinking to myself, how would I understand this if this was presented to me, for the first time? How can I roll this into an easy to understand format? So I just built diagrams. I used to do this on Sunday mornings and in my bed with my laptop. I'd wake up thinking, how can I break this down? And I would start working on the laptop, and I just started building little diagrams. And I gave them to people who were coming to me for help, and they got it just like that. So, and simplicity is totally undermined and undervalued in our world. A simpler lifestyle is amazing.
But Breda,
a simple way of living is amazing.
But Breda, I think you got the gift on that one, because the tendency of us is the complex, make the situation more complex than it's supposed to be. And there's a notion of simplicity is the hardest form, for that we can make from a certain things, right? So I think it's a gift that you have that not a lot of people is having. I know that the timing is coming to an end because you have a meeting next. So I would like to get to the conversation where we know your past already. You know the past and what you're doing now. I always interested to know what next that on the horizon that Breda actually is working on, that we the audience can celebrate with you in advance. Can you share with us any exciting news that?
I started doing vision boards a couple of years back, and those are fabulous. If the people listening today do not have a vision board, I want you to get one. And a vision board can be just as simple as a flip chart sized sheet of paper on your wall. But I want you to draw out a path from where you are right now, and just one of those S-shaped paths. And that's going to be your life path. And at the end of that life path, I want you to write the word legacy.
Okay.
And I did that on myself a few years ago, and I stood looking at it wondering, what kind of legacy do I want to leave in the world? The fastest way to figure that out is, what is it annoys you most in the world? So for me, it's inequality. For me, it's exclusion. For me, it's, you know, it's the place where women are in the world for me, right? So I'm very passionate about trying to take us to equal. Just to be fair, I hate unfairness, and I see a lot of it, and I've had lots of personal experience in this. So I want to see what I can do to change that. Plus, I want to teach everybody how to work emotions and how to work their subconscious mind, their conscious mind, how to reprogram it so that they're living the best life ever. Because it's just a fascinating journey, but it's not mainstream education. So I see it as something I now know how to do. And the onus is on me with that knowledge to share it. So I want to teach people right around the world how to become the most amazing version of themselves they've ever imagined, right? Because you can get to the place they've only ever dreamt of very easily if you know how to work your mind and your mindset and your emotions. Then the world is your oyster.
Wow. I think that, like you say, we're not living fully if we're not good at EQ, right? So definitely there's a lot of room for us to grow in these areas, and I would love to spend more time with you at a later time so that we can figure out what programs on emotional intelligence that you are offering and teaching. So if there's anything that benefiting from our clients in this part of the world, maybe we can engage into a program like that and expand the service that you are doing onto Asia. So and hopefully one day we will see you in person. And I need to let you go now because you have a meeting next. So Breda, thank you so much for spending your time with me and the audience of the program. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you one day. All right?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. Great opportunity for me to share all of the stuff that's inside me, and I'm very expressive, so I love sharing. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining. Have a wonderful day there.
Yeah, you too. Bye.